Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me in this live section. Welcome back to my channel. So guys, we have a lot to talk about. Meanwhile, if you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button, like and share this video. So guys, we cannot just stop talking about this truth. Yes, it has been exposed anyways that Britain is complicit to the persecution of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Yes, it is actually in fact someone exposed that. Now I'll be sharing with you every details you need to know in this live section. So guys, stay with me as I have a lot to share with you guys. So now I'm going to be showing you some documents that exposed that UK Britain is complicit to Kanu's persecution. I mean Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's persecution. So showing on your screen is some a letter. Yes, it's this letter was sent to the United Kingdom about Kanu's detention, saying that they are complicit, saying that they are complicit to Kanu's detention. Now, I don't know if you can see it. If you can see it, you can do well to read it up for yourself and see what it says. So now, according to what is on this letter, it said this is an open indiction. Okay, let's read the letter. Let's see what it says, because it has been exposed that Britain Britain is complicit to Kanu's persecution because of their silence, even when what Nigerian government did actually violated international laws and everything, they are still quiet. So now in August 12th 2005, this letter was written to Britain, the British, that's United Kingdom. So now it says here an open indictment, Britain's blood-stained hands in the prosecution of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. That was the topic of this letter. Now, to the government of the United Kingdom, its Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, and the architecture of its neocolonial duplicity. The letter says, your silence is not golden, it is crimson, stained with the blood of the innocent, of the complicity of the coward. For over 4 years, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, a British citizen by naturalization, has languished in Nigerian detention, subjected to extraordinary detention, torture, and a sham trial that mocks the very common law you bequeathed to your former colony. Yes, you remain aloof, unperturbed. Sorry, I'll take that again. It says you remain aloof, unperturbed, hiding behind, platitudes and of non-interference, while actively enabling a subversion of justice that reeks of historical vendetta. So now, in case you don't know what's going on, this is a letter that was written to the Britain, accusing them of silence, saying that their silence is not golden, but it makes them complicit to Kanu's illegal detention. Because we expect Kanu to be released, despite what we expect Kanu to be released because Nigerian government went against international law and everything. But then, them they are quiet. So this letter was written to the UK, the United Kingdom, to talking about their silence, saying that they are complicit to Kanu's persecution. Now, I won't read all these letters, you can actually read them for yourself. But one of the points I want to bring out here is that, they said, consider the facts which you cannot deny but choose to ignore. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, a Dao British Nigerian national, was adopted in Kenya on June 27, 2021, a blatant violation of international law, including the African Chapter on Human and People's Rights and UN Convention Against Torture. This extraordinary detention, I'm actually reading this letter. It said this extraordinary detention bypassed extradition treaties, Kenya sovereignty, and basic human dignity. Where was your outrage? Your initial query to Nigeria seeking clarification on the circumstances of his arrest was a performative whisper, sweetly forgotten as Kanu or as Nnamdi Kanu was bundled into chains and flown to Abuja. Since then, cricket. Now, no condemnation of Kenya for facilitating the kidnapping, no sanction against Nigeria for floating extradition norms. Instead, you consular officials visited Kanu. So now, this letter was written to the United Kingdom for their silence towards Kanu, saying that they are complicit. Because number one, there was no condemnation. You guys know that they adopted Kanu in Kenya, and then there was no condemnation of Kenya for facilitating the kidnapping. Because Kenya cannot deny that they don't have hands in the kidnapping of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. According to the lawyer said that that when they came to kidnap Kanu in Kenya, that Kanu actually, well, in fact, after the raid in his home in Abia State, Nigeria, he escaped, he sustained injury, and then he escaped, narrowly escaped that attack by military personnel. So he was looking for where to actually settle, and then he settled in Kenya. And guys, guess what happened? Kanu went for his daily activities in Kenya, to run errands, and then he drove to the airport and parked his car. So when he alighted, guys, they just, people suspected to be Nigerian and Kenya officials, security, came and, whooped him and bundled him, took him away. They just treated him like a criminal, took him away, and then they took him to an unknown location, guys, in Nairobi. Now, we were expecting them to take him to an immigration office because he's actually a foreigner. But then they took him to a location, a room, locked him up, beat him there, torture. Is that not terrorism? Is that not kidnap? So you will not, the Kenya people will not say that they don't know, that they are not complicit. Yes, because this thing happened in Kenya. You know, there are one or two officials in Kenya that actually facilitated Kanu's kidnapping. Yes, Kenya don't have to deny that fact. So now they beat him and everything. And then they brought him out after 8 days, and then they bundled him into, already when they were already getting to the airport, already a private jet was waiting in Kenya. So the airports in Kenya, would they say they don't know what happened, how everything happened? So you see that these people are actually complicit to Kanu's persecution, even his extraordinary redemption. So after all this thing happened now, there's no condemnation of Kenya for facilitating the kidnapping. There's no sanction against Nigeria for floating for extradition norms. Instead, they are there doing another thing. So now you can take a look at the letter. You can read it up for yourself later to get the points these people are talking about. Now, look at the next page of the letter. They accused Britain of kifat, or they said their hands are stained. Their hands are stained. They're not innocent, because for them, if they are silent, that means they are complicit to Kanu's persecution. That is it. Britain blood stained hands in Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's persecution. Now, this is the untold truth. Now, in the heart of Nigerians' political storm, one name echoes relentlessly. That is Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, a British citizen by naturalization. Yes, you guys know that Kanu is a British citizen. See, it is the legal right of the UK. Is their duty to fight for Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, and also ask Nigeria why you're holding this man. Guys, nothing has been done. They did not even go ahead to look for him when he was kidnapped. Kanu is a British citizen by naturalization, yet languishing in Nigerian detention for over 5 years, guys. Tortured, silenced, tried in what many legal minds call a sham trial. He has been tortured, silenced, tried in what many legal minds call sham trial, invalid trial. The way he was brought back from Kenya to Nigeria was illegal, and then his trial as well is illegal. You don't need to drag this thing. This is what it is. And through it all, Britain, the country that issued him a passport, has stood silent. But this silence is not golden. it is crimson, guys, stained with blood of the innocent and the complicity of the coward. Now, for the Igbo people, history is not a distant memory. It is a wound that refuses to heal. In 1967, Britain armed and diplomatically backed Nigeria's genocidal blockade of Biafra, a siege that starved over 2 million children to death. Today, that same selective morality plays out again, guys. Only the battlefield has shifted from the plans of Biafra to the cold cell of Abuja. Now, on June 27th, 2021, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu was adopted in Kenya. A thou British Nigerian national kidnapped without due process. Without due process, this was a blatant violation of international law, floating the African chapter on human and people's rights and the UN Convention against torture. No extradition treaty was followed, guys. Kenya's sovereignty was trampled, human dignity was discarded. And where was British outrage? Where was British outrage? What did they do about that? They were silent. Is it because Kanu is an Igbo man? They were silent. A single polite clarification request to Nigeria, sweetly forgotten as Kanu was chained and flown to Abuja. Guys, this was no condemnation of Kenya. No sanction against there was no condemnation of Kenya, no sanction against Nigeria. Instead, British consular officials visited Kanu in October 2021, just in time for Nigeria to amend charges against him, conveniently erasing any mention of his London broadcasts which under UK law are protected expression of self-determination. Coincidence or coordination? The timing whisper of collusion. Guys, let me tell you something. Guys. You see, British law is clear. When UK citizen faces unfair judicial action abroad, the foreign secretary secretary must intervene. Yet Britain hides behind dual citizenship as an excuse. Because it's the citizenship of Nigeria and Britain, they use it as an excuse not to fight for Kanu's release. I repeat myself, when a UK citizen faces unfair judicial action abroad, the foreign secretary must intervene. But now UK, they hide under dual citizenship as excuse, but under international law, that excuse collapses. Dual status does not strip a state of its obligation to protect against torture and arbitrary detention. These people have long tortured Kanu. Instead of intervention, Britain has given endorsement to Nigerians' legal fast, guys. Double jeopardy after an appellate discharge, guys. A Supreme Court ruling that was ignored. This is not diplomacy. This is, they are intentionally doing this to Kanu. Now, the question is actually unavoidable. In Britain's inaction, because Kanu challenges the what they did in 19, the amalgamating incompatible nation for imperial convenience. Now, I believe one of the reasons why I see why these British governments are not fighting for Kanu or doing anything to help Kanu come out from detention was that I think there, in Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's broadcast, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu was really condemning Britain for what they did, decades ago. The echoing 1967 blockade that buyed many people, that starved many people. So could this be why Britain are silent in his detention? Because that alone is exposing so many things going on in Britain, what they did to the Igbos. So now you can see, if Nnamdi Kanu dies in detention, Britain will not be a bystander, guys. If Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, in fact, this letter you're seeing on your screen was written, sent to, the United Kingdom to talk about their silence, saying it's not golden, it is crimson. So if Mazi Nnamdi Kanu dies in detention, Britain will not be a bystander. It will be an enabler. Now, let's remember, the world will still remember this, that they were actually silent, when Kanu was detained. This is not just about one man, it's about the soul of injustice. It's about whether the principle of Britain claims to uphold human rights, the rule of law, protection of citizens apply to all or only to those deemed politically convenient. History is actually watching and history will judge. If Kanu dies in detention today, there are many people we have to blame, because you guys know that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is a British Nigerian citizen, which we expected the Brit. In fact, it's their duty to fight for Kanu because he's illegally held in Nigeria. And the way they brought him back is actually illegal. They should rule on that, but then nothing has been done. No condemnation of some Kenya officials that facilitated his kidnap. No sanction of for Nigerians, guys. So now, Britain's refusal to act is not the result of helplessness. It is a calculated policy. When the Court of Appeal discharged Kanu in October 2022, so now, you know, Britain's refusal to act is not the result of helplessness. It is a calculated policy. When the Court of Appeal discharged Mazi Nnamdi Kanu in October 2022 under Nigerian law, the ruling equated the acquittal. But Britain ignored Nigerian to defy it. Even when Nigerian government ignored that ruling, Britain encouraged Britain encouraged Nigeria to defy it, endorsing the absurd doctrine that discharge is not acquittal. Which one is discharge is not acquittal? This legal profession trashes centuries of precedents, including the very common law, the law tradition Britain exported to Nigeria. And yet, in this moment, London they choose the side of lawlessness. Now, let me now tell you guys that this is not the Britain that lectures the world on democracy. This is a Britain that practiced two-tier citizenship, intervene, vigorously when some nationals are detained abroad, but abandoning those deemed expandable. If you're a journalist detained in Iran, you see swift outrage. You will see swift outrage. Is it because Kanu is an Igbo man? Is it because Kanu is an Igbo man? I believe it's because Kanu is an Igbo man. That is why they are doing him like this. That is why they are treating him like this. So now I believe Kanu is an Igbo man. That is why they are treating him like this. Because if he's not an Igbo man, Kanu will be released since. Or is it because he's an Igbo activist detained in Nigeria? If he's a journalist detained in Iran, you see swift outrage. If you're an Igbo activist detained in Nigeria, you get quiet meeting. They will not help you, they will leave you because you're an Igbo man. This is actually very wrong. Now, I just want you guys to take a look at this, video of what Mazi Nnamdi Kanu said, how they dealt with him, but instead, they abandoned him. They abandoned him, to languish in DSS custody, even despite him being a British citizen. Take a look.
So today I'm wearing two hats. I'm speaking on behalf of Nnamdi Kanu. I'm also speaking on my own behalf. My name is Aloy Ejimako. I'm the special counsel to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and the indigenous people of Biafra. And I'm speaking to you from a location in Nigeria. The man, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, is well known. He's everywhere. He's on Wikipedia. He's an internationally acclaimed freedom fighter. But there's just a few things I need to tell you about him. What brought him to limelight was the formation of the indigenous people of Biafra in the United Kingdom in 2012. Simultaneously, he also founded Radio Biafra. And these two organizations were aimed at one thing: liberation for the people of Biafra, or restoration of the former Republic of Biafra that went defunct in 1970. The right to self-determination is a right that is guaranteed internationally, domestically, and continentally. It's within the black letters of Nigerian law at Article 20 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. The right to self-determination is guaranteed. So the formation of IPOB did not break any law. Not laws of United Kingdom, not international law, not Nigerian law. But guess what? When Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, who was born in Nigeria, but who acquired British citizenship later on, came to Nigeria in October 2015, the government of President Muhammadu Buhari, which had come to power in May, decided to arrest him. He was not arrested between 2012 and 2015 because the government of the day at that time understood that self-determination is not a crime. But the government that came into power in 2015 in May decided that self-determination is going to be treated as a criminal activity. So he was arrested in Lagos. He was charged for treason, also for insulting the president and illegal importation of ready equipment. 3 charges. The treason one, they split it into 2, treason by himself and treason by conspiracy. This thing went on from 2015 until April 2017, when he was eventually granted bail. So he was detained for nearly 18 months. After granting him bail, he returned to his ancestral home in the southeastern part of Nigeria, and he was enjoying his bail when suddenly, between 10 September and 14 September 2017, the Nigerian army, without any justification whatsoever, levied lethal, massive military operations against Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's ancestral home. That day, he was sitting at home with so many people, his family members, including his 2 elderly parents. The attack was lightning, it was a bleakridge, it was massive, and it was not the type of an attack you will expect a national military force to levy on a civilian location. But they did. At the end of the day, 28 people lost their lives. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu sustained injuries. His parents sustained injuries as well. But somehow, by the grace of God, they all managed to escape. From there, the rest is history. And because there was a national and international manhunt for him by the security forces, which rules of engagement was to shoot, not to maim. If you see Nnamdi Kanu, if you encounter him anywhere, shoot not to maim. Not to maim, but shoot to kill. That's what they went there to do on 10 September, but they didn't succeed. But it went on. They went on in a manhunt. So Nnamdi Kanu was forced to flee the municipal boundaries of Nigeria in search of safe haven overseas. Eventually, in May 2021, he settled in Kenya. He entered Nairobi and settled in Kenya somewhere. He never knew that Nigerian security forces, the international branch of it, were laying in wait for him. They laid an ambush for him. So on 19th June 2021, He drove himself to Jomo Kenyatta International Airport on a personal errand. As soon as he drove into the parking lot and alighted from his vehicle, several well-armed security men suspected to be of a mixture of Nigerian and Kenyan security forces swooped on him, grabbed him, abducted him, and put him forcibly in a vehicle and drove away. Well, they didn't take him to the police station. They didn't take him to immigration because he was a foreigner. He should have been taken to immigration. They didn't take him to any official law enforcement facility. They took him to a secret location in Nairobi, a non-official secret location. So in effect, they disappeared him. And they kept him at that secret location for a whole 8 days. And those 8 days he endured horrendous torture. All these are matters of record between the various tribunals and courts before whom this matter has been brought. I cannot begin to give you all the details. Horrendous torture in violation of basic human rights, in violation of the laws of Kenya, Nigeria, and the international community. When Nnamdi Kanu was abducted on 19th June 2021, the proper thing that should have been done is to take him to a police station, from there to a court. And then if you wanted him back in Nigeria, you subject him to what is called extradition proceedings. This is a basic tenet of the law that you see in the laws of any nation. Kenya has an extradition act to which Mazi Nnamdi Kanu should have been subjected. But guess what? They didn't do that. They rather disappeared him for 8 days, tortured him to their heart's content. And on 27th June, they secretly brought him out from this location and took him through the back doors, evading Kenyan immigration, direct to the tarmac of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, Nairobi, where a private plane was waiting. They bundled him into the plane, chained him to the chair, and everything. He endured 5-6 hours flight from Nairobi to Kenya in the most excruciating circumstances. They arrived in Nigeria late in the evening and the plane flew back to Nairobi. They took him to the headquarters of the National Intelligence Agency in Abuja, where he spent the first night with all the lights left on to assure his maximum discomfort. The following day, they transferred him to the headquarters of Directorate of State Security in Abuja. And on the third day, they brought him before the Federal High Court in Abuja. The Federal High Court was well aware that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has counsel of record. It was an open case, it wasn't a new case, a pre-existing case. But the Federal High Court decided to conduct the arraignment in violation of his constitutional right to counsel, and that arraignment led to the indefinite detention with which we are struggling today.
So guys, you clearly heard what the lawyer said. Now, let me come in now in this case. Now, remember we're talking about the betrayal of Britain, despite Mazi Nnamdi Kanu being a British citizen. Now, you heard everything the lawyer said that happened to Kanu. He said everything in details. In case you did not get him, you can actually go back and watch the video later. So now, he's talked about how the thing happened, how they kidnapped, how Kenya officials, kidnapped Kanu and everything. Now we were expecting when Kanu went missing in Kenya, we were expecting that Britain would look for him. But guys, there was no any effort, despite what it is clear, even in British law, it is clear if someone is held illegally in another country, it is the duty of them to take action. When a British man is held illegally in Iran, you will see the British or Britain, they will take action. British government will take action to bring out the man or release him or to free him. But is it because Kanu is actually an Igbo activist held in Nigeria? Is that why British government doesn't want to take action? Now, let me now tell you that if anything happens to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu in detention, we have to blame British government because Kanu is actually a citizen by naturalization. He's a citizen of British Britain. So why is it that there's no efforts by there's no they have not taken any action to release him, no sanction, despite knowing fully well that he was kidnapped? No sanction for Nigeria, no condemnation of some Kenya officials that facilitated his kidnapping. The Igbo will actually remember, and the world will actually remember what British government did. Now, what British government hiding is that they're using this narrative to hide, saying that discharge is not acquittal. When Kanu was granted, when he was discharged by appeal court, they are saying discharge is not acquittal. That was that is a judicial lie, fraud. Now, Britain's duplicity hides in a plain sight. They claim we cannot interfere. That is what they are saying. They are saying that they cannot interfere. But under their own consular chapter, when a citizen when a citizen is fairly tried, you know, it is actually in fact, it's a must. They must intervene. Intervention is not optional. It is a duty. This inversion is not restaurant. It's a duty for them to intervene. So you can see that this is a strategic abandonment. They just abandoned him, betraying him despite being a citizen of British. Now, by refusing to act, Britain is enabling Nigeria to weaponize its judiciary, turning the court into instruments of punishment rather than justice. It gives a green light for endless pretrial detention. It gives a green light for jurisdictional manipulation. It gives a green light for retroactive application of repealed law, ignoring constitutional supremacy. This is a template for slow motion political assassination, a death by legal process, guys. So now, the extraordinary detention from Kano in June 2021 was not a rogue operation. It was the result of coordinated silence. Britain had leverage to stop it. They could have issued a diplomatic protest to Nairobi if they actually cared about Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. They would have issued a diplomatic protest to Nairobi. They could have demanded Kanu's release under the African chapter. They could have, if they wanted to take action, these are the things they should have done. They could have taken the case to International Court of Justice. They did none of these things. Instead, they offered performative whispers and then locked up. When it suits them, Britain champions human rights, invokes treaties, applying sanctions and demanding accountability. That is when it suits them. But when it's the victim, when the victim is Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, they retreat into selective, justice. This is why the accusation stands. Britain practiced geopolitical, triage. Some lives are worth fighting for. Others are expandable. That is exactly what they are doing to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. If it's a journalist that is held in Iraq, they are going to protest, demand for his release. But with Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, they stay calm and silent. What's the fear for? The fear is not just about one man's voice, actually. It's about what his survival represents. His survival represents a challenge to the post-colonial state structure Britain engineered. So you can see that even British government is actually scared of Kanu because that they are not, the fear is not just about one man's voice. It's about what his survival represents. His survival represents a challenge to the post-colonial state structure Britain engineered. A reminder that self-determination is still a living principle under international law. A treat to the comfort of the geopolitical status quo. And so Britain chooses the path of silence, knowing silence is not neutral. It is active complicity. The fact that they are silent is what? Active complicity. Now, if history is any guide, the truth will not stay buried. Just as the world eventually acknowledged the horror of the Biafran blockade. You know what happened? They blocked that, caused starvation in the southeast. So too, so they will see the persecution for what it is: a state-sanctioned vendetta, aided and abetted by a foreign power that claims the mantle of justice. Now, the thing is, when that reckoning comes, Britain will have no place to hide. Britain will have no place to hide at all. It is their duty to fight for the release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. The timeline itself will actually tell the story that 27th of June 2021, Kanu was adopted in Kenya. In October 2021, British consular visit followed by Nigerian conveniently altering charges. Now, October 2022, Court of Appeal discharged him on jurisdictional ground. Aftermath, what happened? Nigeria refused to release him. Britain stays silent. Locked up. This is not the behavior of an ally to justice. This is the footprint of silent partner in oppression. I feel Nigerian government and British government, they are partnering to silence Kanu, to silence him. In 1967, Britain armed Nigeria and defended its blockade, calling it a matter of unity. Now in 2025, they shield Nigeria from accountability, calling it non-interference. The vocabulary changes, but the underlying, calculus is that the disposability of Igbo lives remains constant. The most do you know the most brazen insult of or to justice is the intervention of the phrase they always say discharge is not acquittal, a legal absurdity with no basis in Nigeria or international law. Crafted to keep Kanu, they always use that that narrative to keep Kanu in detention despite being cleared by a competent court. Britain not only accepted this perversion, they encouraged it. When Kenya breached its sovereignty by handling over Kanu without due process, Britain had three choices: confront the violation, demand restitution, and stay silent. They chose silence. When Nigeria flouted its own constitutional supremacy, Britain could have: number one, they would have issued formal protests, escalated to the UN, supported enforcement of court ruling. They chose complicity, guys. They chose complicity. This is why the accusation is so damning. Britain's inaction is not an oversight, it is a deliberate policy of selective protection, shaped by old grievance, colonial interest, and a willingness to trade justice for geopolitical convenience. When the reckoning comes, history will record not just what Britain did, but what it refused to do. That is justice. Now, still, this is the continuation of the lawyer's, video. He said a lot of things. Just calm down, watch, relax, and get the full details of what the lawyer said of how they treated Kanu and everything. Despite all these things, Britain were silent. They stayed calm. They did not act. Despite he's a citizen of British. Guys, take it.
So today I'm wearing two hats. Anyways, taking you back a few steps. The little military invasion of 2017 was not unrequited, judicially speaking. I took the matter before two tribunals, or a tribunal and a court. First, I took it to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, which rendered a decision in March 2018 condemning the action and calling it a violation of the African Charter. And they wrote to the President of Nigeria, they wrote a letter to the President of Nigeria requesting him or directing him. They used diplomatic language, but the decision was there that what you did is wrong, so you need to roll it back. You need to reverse everything you have done, which includes declaration of IPOB as a terrorist organization and hounding their members as criminals. The African Commission held that what Nigerian government was doing was persecution, not prosecution. That the IPOB and its members simply possess an inconvenient political opinion which the Nigerian government was seeking to suppress by means of punishment of some sort. And they asked or directed Nigerian government to reverse itself. Nigerian government never did. Rather, it escalated. Well, subsequently, I went to a local court, a high court in Abia State in eastern Nigeria. I sued the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Nigerian Army, and other parties who were confederates in that attack of September 2017. And in January 2022, fortunately for us, we won. The High Court made an order. The High Court reached a judgment that what happened to Nnamdi Kanu in September 2017 was a flagrant violation of his constitutional right to life and constitutional right to his privacy. And the court proceeded to make an order ordering the federal government of Nigeria or Federal Republic of Nigeria to pay him a compensation of 1 billion Nigerian naira, which is over $1 million US dollars. The court also ordered the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the President of Nigeria to issue a public apology to be published in 3 national Nigerian newspapers to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. None of this has happened. So we kept that aside. So when they brought Mazi Nnamdi Kanu forcibly from Kenya without extradition proceedings, I characterized it an act of extraordinary rendition. Initially, there was a misunderstanding, a broad, widespread misunderstanding by vast majorities of Nigerians who were mouthing the cliche, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu extradited from Kenya. No, that was wrong. He wasn't. I told people he wasn't. He was extraordinarily renditioned or rendered, and that is against international law, Kenyan law, and laws of the Federation of Nigeria. So while his criminal trial was making its way slowly at Abuja, with all the several amendments the government was bringing, they walked away from treasonable felony, insulting the president, importation of radio equipment, and bam, to terrorism. That's how it happened. And they did this 7 times. 7 amendments. If Nnamdi Kanu was guilty, why is it taking so long to bring him to trial between 2015 and today? That is 8 years. So what he's undergoing is not really a judicial trial. It's a trial by ordeal. Trial by fire. Imprisonment before conviction. They just want to get as many years of jail time out of him as possible, because they know that with the evidence available, conviction will be impossible. And that was made worse by the extraordinary rendition, which I took also as a civil violation to a federal high court in Nigeria. And in October 2022, the Federal High Court came down with a judgment that extraordinary rendition was a violation of his constitutional rights, his fundamental rights, and they awarded him 500 million Nigerian naira. That's about $800,000. So all around, everywhere that this matter has gone to, including in July 2022, before the Human Rights Council at the United Nations. The Human Rights Council, United Nations, came down with an opinion that what happened to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu in Kenya and that brought him to Nigeria is a very grave violation of international law. And they directed that he should be released unconditionally. And of course, the Court of Appeal in Nigeria did come down with a similar judgment in same October 2022, discharging Mazi Nnamdi Kanu of all charges and bearing any further trial of his person in any court in Nigeria. as a consequence, as a direct consequence of the extraordinary rendition. So what more can you ask for a man to deserve his freedom? How many have I counted? United Nations, which in this case should be considered a world court. Then you have the Nigerian Court of Appeal, which is the second highest court in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Then you have the Federal High Court, which is the court of first instance at the federal level. And of course, you have the State High Court that awarded him 1 billion Nigerian naira. So between 2015 and today, 8 years and running, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has snagged 4 major victories against the Federal Republic of Nigeria, with Federal Republic of Nigeria winning nothing. What more do you need as stark evidence, affirmative evidence that what is happening here, ladies and gentlemen, is an act of persecution, not prosecution? It's time to end it. On his behalf, I will ask all men and women of goodwill everywhere in the world to speak up. There was this saying about Jews. When they came for the Jew, you said nothing. When they came for the Jew, you said nothing because you're a trade unionist. Then when they came for the trade unionist, you said, well, I'm a scientist. You said nothing. They took the Jew, they took the trade unionist. And then when they came for the scientists, nobody spoke for you. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is a poster boy for all the injustices that a great race, the Igbo people, and their cousins in the former eastern Nigeria have been subjected to since the founding of Nigeria. These injustices became more public because since 2015 they have been escalated. So how do you fight back? You fight back by telling the system, I want out. I want my own country is not a crime. It does not require a bullet. It doesn't require muscular military law enforcement. What it requires is sitting across the table and talking about it. A lot of nations have been founded on referendum. That's what Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and the Indigenous people of Biafra were asking for, that led to all this conundrum, to all this saga.
So guys, British government did not understand the fact that Kanu asked for referendum, which is not actually a crime. It's not a crime. And then he demanded for self-determination because of the long persecution of the Igbos, which Britain was actually, they actually coordinated that attack on Biafran, the Biafran genocide. Now, Britain did not start betraying Biafra. In fact, I feel Britain is not talking because they actually, in fact, they have plans to, stop that Biafran movement, because the betrayal did not just start now. It started a long time ago, even the Biafran war, that genocide that happened. Imagine their actions actually starved how many million Igbos? Like, you see that the hatred started, like the hatred has been there since. So as far as the hatred has been there since, you don't even expect British government to come and fight for Kanu, because they already know that this man's survival is actually going to cost a lot for them. Yes, they will, it will cost a lot for them. So they have chosen to be silent, which is not actually very wrong. It's very, very, very wrong. Nigeria is silent, Britain is silent. There are many roles British government would have played if they really cared about the Kanu, but they ignored those roles. Even sanction Nigeria for their actions towards Kanu, they didn't. To even question Kenya officials that facilitated his kidnap, they didn't. Now, to understand British or Britain's silence, you have to follow the interest to protect. Nigeria is not just a formal colony. It is a strategic economic partner British companies profits Nigerians oil exports. They control stakes in its banking sector and influence its security contracts. Any destabilization, especially from a movement questioning the very existence of the Nigerian state, threatens those interests. You can see. So now, protecting Nigerians' political status quo means suppressing voices like Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, no matter the human costs. That is just it. So now, Britain does not fear Kanu's guilty. It fears his success. Because if he calls for self-determination, gains because if he calls for self-determination gains traction, it legitimizes similar struggle across Africa, reopening colonial borders. Britain and its allies would rather keep frozen in place. From London, Kanu's detention is not just about Nigeria, it's about maintaining the illusion that the post-colonial map is untouchable. Now, under Article 1 of the UN Chapter of the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, self-determination is a recognized right, and British champions it in Kosovo, in the East Timor, in the Falklands. But when it comes to Biafra, the principle evaporates. It just evaporates. The hypocrisy is actually glaring. Yes, we are seeing the betrayer now. They don't, they drag legs to enforce some things when it doesn't favor them, but when it favors them, they will take action swiftly. Britain's diplomatic strategy has been to buy time for Nigeria, to let delays, legal acrobatics, and the slow erosion of health do what an outright execution cannot. Every month Kanu remains in detention, weakens his movement's momentum. Why Britain avoids the optics of openly supporting his persecution. This death by diplomatic, that's actually death by diplomatic suffocation. Now, let me now tell you that, you know, this narrative that Nigerian governments are always saying, even the Attorney General, they're living on with this narrative saying that this charge is not acquittal. We actually expect the Nigerian government to, actually obey what the appeal courts, said, obey the court judgment of the appeal courts. Rather, they say this charge is not acquittal. Now, let us just call it what it is. That is a judicial fraud. That phrase, discharge is not acquittal, is not law. It is not precedent. It is not justice. It's an intervention, actually, a political weapon dressed in legal robes, crafted to keep Mazi Nnamdi Kanu in detention despite clear appellate discharge. In both Nigerian constitutional law and international, law, once a competent court discharges a person on jurisdictional grounds, that person is free. To say otherwise is to strip the court of their authority and replace the rule of law with the rule of politics. Right now, as far as they are living with this narrative saying discharge is not acquittal, I feel they don't regard, there's no respect for the rule of law, even when they go about preaching about the rule of law. Britain's acceptance to this absurdity, to this discharge is not acquittal, is saying that it means they are not simply silent, they are also endorsing legal prevention to keep an innocent man in chains. History will actually remember that in this case of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, that discharge is not acquittal was that lie that shackled justice, and Britain repeated it with a straight face. Now, discharge is not acquittal, it's actually a judicial lie. There is need to hide. As Kanu is a British citizen, is a British Nigerian citizen, which is the duty of the British government to, it is their duty to act swiftly to make sure that they release Kanu. Even you ask questions first, is their duty. So, guys, let me know what you think about this on the comment section. Drop a comment below. If you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button, like and share this video. So, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for staying with me, and I'll see you guys next time.